Hey guys, welcome back. This is Project Life week 32, and today I'm pretty excited to play with a few of the new exclusive goodies from Citrus Twist. They've just hit the store and I wanted to play with them today. I decided that I would just grab a paper pad to work with these ephemera and sticker pieces. And one of the collections that I thought worked really nicely with this was the Pink Fresh Studio Office Hours. As you can see, I've still got a reasonable amount of the 6x6 paper pad there, so I grabbed that out to use today. I picked out a couple of the papers. One's just kind of a really basic peachy dot kind of pattern because I know I'm going to do some journaling on that card, so I didn't want the pattern to be too kind of overwhelming. And this card here, well, paper that I've trimmed down into a card, and I've been quite specific about how I've trimmed that. I'm going to use it for my title card because I've got an idea in mind. I'm going to stamp on that to make my title card, so I needed to just position the white piece of that paper specifically. For my other 3x4 sort of slots here, I decided to actually just grab out the Everyday Life cards from Citrus Twist. They kind of go nicely together, and I was sort of trying to avoid kind of being overly peachy. I guess that sunrise photo there is very bright, very saturated in color, and so I kind of wanted to contrast that with some blues. So I ended up picking a couple of blue cards, and it does kind of pull out the little bit of blue in that sunrise photo as well. Now, as always, a million different die cuts in this pack, so I'm just starting by really quickly kind of just assessing which ones I know I definitely will not use and which ones I could possibly use. I do this every time. It just kind of helps to make the decision process a little bit easier at the end. If I've already got them sorted into sort of two basic piles, and I'm definitely not going to use as many as I have pulled out. Those are just options. So I start then by pulling out the options and then putting them where I think I'm going to use them, and that very quickly determines which ones I will and won't use again. So it just kind of makes that process a little bit easier rather than going through all of them in one go. Obviously, some of these I'm using sort of putting more than one option on each photo just to kind of see how it looks, and that will help me narrow it down further. What I decided to do though is to start working on my title card first, because I know that it's going to add a certain amount of busyness to this page, and I want to make sure I've got that on before I start doing the rest. Now I've just used some of that post-it tape to kind of mask off the white portion of that card. And what I'm going to do is do some, I was going to say repeat stamping. It's not really repeat stamping. I am going to fill up this white portion of the card with the word week. Instead of just stamping week once this week, I'm going to stamp it a million times. I'm using that weekish stamp set from Citrus Twist and Retro Hip Company, one of my favorites and perfect for this kind of project. I'm only using one color ink, and it's Bellini from Catherine Pooler. It was the closest ink that I had to that sort of peach color that's already in this spread. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm just starting with the largest stamps and I'm filling in that card. So I start largest and work my way to smallest. It's kind of easier to fill in those gaps like that. The other thing to make sure you're doing when you're doing a masked portion like this is to overlap the edge of the masking. The more definition you get on those edges, the better the shape's going to show up. This card is slightly less important because it does have those colored edges, but when you're doing any kind of masked shape, it is really important to kind of fill in the edges and overlap those edges so that your eye can visually fill in the shape. I'm working my way down. I'm right down to the teeny tiniest little stamps now, seeing how many of those I can fill in. I've really filled in all the gaps that they fit in, so that's it. I'm going to peel off the post-it tape. I love that post-it tape so much, perfect for a project like this. And you can see how much sort of, it's not super busy, but you know, like it adds a bit more pattern to this page, which means that I really kind of want to simplify some of these other cards. So So I immediately removed one of the die cuts from my 3x4 photo on the left. I'm just going to leave that as it is. And then I'm going to just pick the smaller of the die cuts to add to my little photo of Lil here. Of course, I can't leave well enough alone. I do want to add some of these amazing puffy stickers. There's something about them. I love the colors of these stickers. I mean, they're definitely me with the red and this teal and pink and blue and yeah, all sorts of good stuff there. I probably could have kept it a lot simpler than I did, but I want to add some stickers as well. So I'm layering a sticker with that die cut piece, and I'm also going to add a couple of these enamel dots, and look at me, I'm using orange. Really stepping out of my comfort zone here. So I'm going to use a couple of enamel dots. I'm going to stick with the orange and the yellow this week. I'm not going to add any of the other colors. These ones are kind of jewel toned enamel dots, so a little bit different than the colors I've picked from this spread, but the yellow and the orange I felt just kind of, they worked with that sunrise photo, so that's just going to be kind of my combining element on here. Now for this card, it has like a pre-printed kind of design on it, so I am moving my photo a little bit further down than the other one just so that that sentiment shows up the top, which meant I had to be a tiny bit careful where I placed these die cuts, and I've just layered two of the die cuts. So there's a little coffee cup and the sentiment, and look at me, I picked the green one, the green coffee cup. There's a couple of other little bits of green on here, one in my photo on the left there, but also I'm going to use this change die cut, and it has that very lime green in. Definitely not my preference, but because I've used that green in, or I'm using the whole die cut and it's got that green in it, I want to add the green somewhere else so that the green doesn't just stick out like a sore thumb. So hence my green coffee cup. Now the other thing that I'm going to do is add one little stamp onto my photo. I'm stamping directly onto my photos. I print at home on Canon Photo Glossy 2 paper, so I love using my Memento Tuxedo black ink straight onto the photo. That's from that 6x8 storytelling stamp set, which is still one of my favorites, and I'm going to tuck that die cut so that the stamp kind of fits underneath it really nice and tight. So I'm powering through this. I don't have a whole lot left to go. I do have my journaling card, but I want to finish off my title card first. I hadn't really kind of had any huge brainwaves about what I was going to do for the rest of this, other than I thought I would stamp like my date numbers on there, week numbers, sorry, and there's no labels in this die cut pack, so I was sort of wondering what I was going to add my date stamping with, but there is this really fun paper that I've still got left in the 6x8 pad. It's got all these kind of, I don't know, like taped notes on it. I figured I could use some of those. I just like the graphic nature of them. They kind of work really nicely with those stickers and die cut pieces. So I'm going to use this blue one. I'm going to use that on my title card. It brings a little bit more of that blue in there and balances out some of those warmer colors. Like I said, I'm going to stamp my week numbers, and I'm going to try and stack everything. So I want to, again, do a little bit of overlapping. So I'm just working out where my die cut's going to go, and then I'm going to stamp my two numbers, week 32. And I have actually just moved that die cut down a little bit so that I can stamp those. So then I can move that die cut back up, and you can see that that kind of fake tape on it covers up the 32 just a little bit. Now I did trim the corner of that just a nudge so that it's the same angle as where that like masked stamping meets the solid peach, and that way that you kind of get that like super layered look. You can't quite tell what's in front and what's behind, and it's all getting a little bit mixed up in there. So I've gone ahead and just stamped my date stamps on there, and I suppose I probably could have left the word week, the sort of repeat stamping, as kind of the title, but because I've stamped those numbers in black, I really did want to add the word week in black. So I grabbed out my favorite little black foam alphas. Unfortunately, I've only got one E, but it sort of works to my advantage, because what I'm going to do is just piece together these foam alphas so that they look like they are in behind that die cut piece as well. So instead of a second E, I used an F, and I just trimmed a little bit off the bottom of it so that it still lines up at the top with the other E. And then I did the same thing with the K. So despite having chopped all of those pieces off, your eye still kind of makes up for the fact that it's missing. So it still reads as weak. Like, I'm super happy with how that turned out. It worked better than I thought it was going to. So that was a really good solution to only having one E left. Now, because I've used that kind of note paper fake die cut there on the title card, I've decided I'm going to use a couple more. So I've removed the ephemera piece from this black and white photo, and I'm going to just trim out another one, again, going with that kind of peachy color. I'm going to use another one of those kind of cutouts to just create a little cluster down here. It's going to be the perfect place to add a little bit more stamping. I guess the reality is I could have stamped directly on that photo. I stamp in white on dark photos all the time. But because the photo was black and white, I just felt like stamping a white stamp on there, it would just get a little bit lost. Whereas having this sort of cluster of color really does draw your eye towards it. And it just is going to make it stand out a little bit more, especially on that black and white photo. So I've added my die cut and one of those cute little puffy stickers, and then I am adding my stamp, and yes, I did cut that stamp in half. It's totally fine. It doesn't damage the stamps in any way, shape or form. They go back together perfectly either on the matting or on your block, either way. So I've used two of these pieces. Like I said, I want to use another one, or just going to give me that kind of rule of three. So my three little die cut note card pieces. I would not necessarily have picked this one to use on my journal card here. It's a little bit light. It doesn't quite stand out enough, but I really did want to use a green one, just for the same reason that I used that green coffee cup, just to add a little bit of consistency and add a little bit of the colors throughout the spread. So I probably would have preferred a darker one, but I'm going with what I can use. This one was the only green whole one left on that sheet. That's why I'm using it. I'm just going to make it stand out a little bit more off the page by stamping a sentiment in behind it. So I'm stacking these two words, this moment. I've stamped this a little bit higher than moment so that I can add that die cut piece in, create that little cluster, but you can still read this moment. So I just went ahead and I typed out my journaling on my typewriter. It's very messy, but it is what it is. The Pink Fresh Studio papers at 6x6, they're very thick, sort of cardstock rather than paper, which my vintage typewriter struggles with, but I got it through eventually. And I just repeated that same thing, so I added the stamping on there with that black ink just to kind of make it all a little bit consistent. Same thing with the enamel dots, and that is this week all done. Bright, colourful. I love these new exclusives from Citrus Twist, so I will leave the link for you in the description if you want to go and check them out yourself. Hey, thanks for watching today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you again really soon. Bye!